If there's one common theme with weird RCDB coasters, it's that they come from very niche manufacturers. Most of them are from companies that have only produced maybe even 15 coasters at the most. However, this month's entry is from a company that you might very well know, Jinma Rides. Jinma is by far China's biggest coaster manufacturer. Better known as Golden Horse, the name they had until 2020, they've built over 374 coasters over their 40-year lifespan. For reference, Intamin has built 180 and B&M has only built 124. Actually, I think the only manufacturer that's built more than them is Vekoma. So yeah, they're a pretty massive name in the coaster industry. Now, another massive thing in a completely different industry is Vocaloid. Ever since the mid-2000s, Vocaloid has dominated the J-pop scene. With some massive names in the music industry like Deco27, Gumi, Kariki Bear, and too many more to list, Vocaloid has been a big thing for a while. With it dominating Japanese culture for almost 15 years now, it was almost inevitable that a collaboration between Vocaloid and amusement parks would take place. In 2019, Yomiuri Land in Japan, home to the famous Togo Hyper Bandit, announced that there would be a temporary takeover of the park by Hatsune Miku and her squad. This is probably the most well-known Vocaloid crossover, and they've done it a few more times in 2020 and 2023. But this was just a temporary thing. What if, instead, a coaster was built specifically for virtual singers? Well, that's just what Joypolis in Shanghai, China was cooking up for the 2016 season. Joypolis in itself could be a whole own deep dive, but for now, I'll just give you the important parts. It's a chain of indoor amusement centers in Japan and China. They got their start with Joypolis Yokohama in 1994 as video game company Sega's second attempt at amusement park concept. The first few years saw its revenue and attendance climb much higher than originally anticipated, which led Sega to build multiple others in the following years. Joypolis venues were established in Niigata in 1985, Tokyo, Fukuoka, and Shinjuku in 1996, Kyoto in 1997, and Okayama and Umeda in 1998. Tokyo obviously became the most popular of these locations, surpassing Yokohama's location as the flagship Joypolis. This success, however, came at the detriment of some other locations, and Shinjuku was the first to close on August 22, 2000. Following this would be a series of closures that marked kind of the downfall of Joypolis. Niigata was the next to close in early 2001, followed only a month later by Yokohama, the original location. Fukuoka also closed in 2001, although part of it did stay open as a smaller Club Sega venue until the late 2000s. 2002 saw the death of the Kyoto location, which, when it closed, only had 2 attractions left operating. The next 6 years continued on, but Okayama's location closed in 2008, leaving only 2 Joypolises left. However, Joypolis would see a bit of resurgence in the next few years. 2014 and 2015 saw locations open in Shanghai and Qingdao in China. This location in Shanghai is where the story of Music Coaster Feats Violet comes into play. But who is Violet? Well, she's a virtual singer that was created by Animate China, CHK, and CA Cultural Technology Group back in 2015. She's a pretty underground virtual idol. I hadn't even heard of her before researching this, and Virtual Idol Wiki only lists 2 tracks on her entire discography, both in collaboration with another Animate China singer, GBB. She was also in several promotions with another singer, Aoki Lapis, who's actually a Japanese creation from B-Plats, but the company that owned these characters were all linked together with another called IMA Group. As soon as you start doing research into Vocaloid, you realize it's a whole lot more than you initially think. Also, Violet isn't actually a Vocaloid, just a virtual idol. They sound kinda like the same thing on paper, but the difference is that the Vocaloids are all synthesized voices, whereas virtual idols actually have people singing as them. Well, even with Violet only having 2 songs, she's still been surprisingly spread across multiple different mediums. She's had 2 hologram performances in Shenzhen and Hong Kong, she was a guest at the Shenzhen Animation Festival in 2015, and was even named one of the top 10 cartoon characters in China in the same year. Heck, she's even the protagonist of her own Chinese manhwa, Eternal Violet. Manhwa, not to be confused with manhwa, that's Korean. Also, both of those aren't to be confused with Japanese manga. I know it's odd, but they're all their own distinct thing. I can't read Chinese, but going through the first chapter, it looks like a typical slice-of-life music band series, kinda like K-On! Or Bocchi the Rock, but with a few supernatural elements, and that Violet isn't necessarily from this world. Her page on the Virtual Idol Wiki says that she's a 17-year-old girl from the planet Ista, who came to Earth in order to find her lost memories. Okay, hey, it's Atomic Coasters from the Edit. I just want to say, I had a source for this,
It had like at least the entirety of the first chapter, probably even more. It doesn't exist anymore. I went on Google, there's no more references, there's no more sources for this entire manhwa. I don't know where it went. If anyone knows anything about this manhwa, if you have any like panels or anything, please like DM me on Discord or something. My quest for this isn't even related to the video anymore. I just want to uncover this piece of lost media. I think it's kind of interesting.
Violet's first debut was at the end of 2014 at a year-end event in Qinglong Ocean Kingdom, a SeaWorld-style park in Shanghai, home to a B&M wing coaster and the world's largest aquarium at almost 23 million liters. Kind of interesting that Violet got her start with amusement parks, as 2 years later in 2016, she would find her moment to step into the starlight as the two sides of the story finally collide with the opening of Phase 2 of Joypolis Shanghai on February 6th, 2016. After all of that preamble, we can finally get into Music Coaster featuring Violet itself. As mentioned all the way back at the beginning of this video, Music Coaster was built by Jinma Rides. As you walked up through the entrance and into the queue line, guests were accompanied by many electronic posters of Violet, as well as what seems to possibly even have been a pre-show of sorts featuring Violet herself. Guests then walked up to the station, greeted by one of 4 semi-enclosed spinning coaster trains. The trains themselves almost look identical to Reverchon's spinning Wild Mouse trains, however, they also had a canopy over the top, presumably because of the tight clearances on the ride. Starting off with a shallow drive tire lift hill, Music Coaster took riders up an undocumented height before dropping them into the course. Yep, this was another ride whose stats weren't recorded. After being dropped off the lift, riders were spun around tight hairpin turns that encircled decorated support pillars. The whole ride itself encircled a large truss centerpiece that was decorated with neon lights and TVs. As the trains went through the course, riders were accompanied by music sung by Violet. After spinning around for a while, riders came to a stop, exiting the ride, usually confused on whether they liked it or not. You may have noticed this entire time that I've been speaking about Music Coaster in the past tense. This is because it no longer operates at Joypolis Shanghai. In May of 2017, just over a year after opening, Music Coaster was closed off and arcade cabinets were placed in front of the entrance. It remained standing but not operating for 3 months, before being removed entirely in August of 2017. It's not known what happened to the coaster afterwards. It may have been scrapped, or maybe it could have been sold and relocated to an obscure park that hasn't been rediscovered yet on RCDB. So, where is Joypolis now? Well, Music Coaster's closure was followed a year later by the closure of the Umeda location, leaving Tokyo as the only Japanese location left. Regardless of this, the chain seems to have learned from their past, and are focusing more now on improving their existing locations instead of massively expanding to new ones. But that doesn't mean they've stopped entirely. In 2021, they opened Joypolis Guangzhou, their 4th location and 2nd to still have a coaster operating. Shockwave Riders is Guangzhou's coaster, and funnily enough, just like Music Coaster, it's also a Jinma Rides spinning coaster. Along with this, a sports center bearing the Joypolis name was built in Sendai and opened in April of 2022. Even though the chain has seen some heavy closures and rough patches, it seems like Joypolis is here to stay. As for Violet, well, she seems to have never really caught on outside of China. Like I mentioned earlier, she's only had 2 songs since her debut 8 years ago, both collaborations with GBB. These 2 albums, Music Girl's Wings of Time 1 and 2, were on Spotify for a while, but have since been removed. There is one reference to these albums on YouTube that is, as far as I'm aware, the most intact piece of Violet's work on the internet. There's also another clip I was able to find from one of her live concerts, but in this one, she seems to have a more synthesized sounding voice. Regardless, I can't really find any sources of her past 2017, so she seems to have fallen out of relevancy. Almost fittingly enough, the latest thing I've been able to find was the closure of Music Coaster itself. If you're just here to learn about this coaster and why it's odd, you can leave now, but if you're here to listen to the struggles of researching this series, well, this was by far the biggest struggle yet. So let's go over what results come up when you actually search for this coaster. Searching the English name, you get 3 results that actually hit. Finding the right thing to search up here is kinda difficult, but I landed on the terms Music Coaster and Joypolis separated. Searching like this, 79 results come up. Not as few as you would expect from this series. Well, the first page of Google says 79 results. When you click to the second page, it only shows 15 results as coming up. Odd. Still, it's pretty easy to start whittling down even that number. So, these are the actual results that show up. 17 results, but it's not really 17 sources. The ones in yellow are all duplicates of the RCDB page. These ones in red are just false positives. They're from a couple Japanese musicians who both did a show at one of the Japanese Joypolis locations, and who were also on FM Osaka's Music Coaster segment. That live journal page no longer exists, but looking at a Wayback Machine archive from 2017, it looks like it was probably another false positive. Meanwhile, all of these ones in greens are just where it appears in a list. So, in actuality, there are 4 sources. The first is RCDB. The second is from a Coaster Force trip report from the user Jordanovsky. They don't really mention anything about it aside from the music being quite fun. Charming, but not really anything to go off of. The third is from Client JP, which is a page that has nothing but an embedded tweet from @ThrillRidePark, a Japanese coaster page. This tweet has a couple pictures and a caption that also dogs on the coaster like Jordan did. The fourth and final is the Coaster Friends page, the same website I found out more about Pine Forest Flying Mouse and Ant Kingdom from episode 1. This one has 2 comments from different users both talking about the coaster. The user Kaiser says that Shanghai is the worst Joypolis park, noting how expensive it is, that there isn't much to do, and that Music Coaster wasn't open when they went. User RedBoo97 has a similar experience with Music Coaster being closed, but also something interesting. This is translated from German, so it's not an exact quote, but according to park employees, RedBoo was told that a revival of the theme of Music Coaster was going to continue for around 3 months. This comment was posted on the 27th of April 2017, and presumably RedBoo went a few weeks or months prior. However, as we already know, the coaster's entrance was blocked off only a month after this post in May, and the coaster was removed in August, so no retheme ever happened. If what those employees said was right, then that means that maybe Music Coaster wasn't originally going to be removed when it was first blocked off. We still don't really know the reason why it was removed, but at least we know that it might have been a last-minute decision. So those 4 were the results that we got from the English name for Music Coaster. Searching with the Chinese name, we get 6 results. The first 3 are the RCDB page and Twitter thing, but the last 3 are a bit different. One is from Ride Time. This was one of the websites that showed up during the English results, but weirdly this page itself didn't. The page doesn't have any information about the ride, but it's a complete treasure trove of pictures. None of these are on RCDB, but they're easily the highest quality pictures of Music Coaster on the internet. These next 2 are news articles that talk about Joypolis and its future. They look fairly similar, so I might just... Hey, wait a minute, these are exactly the same. Okay, well, I guess we only have 2 Chinese results. It doesn't really matter that these are the same because they don't really talk about Music Coaster all too much, but there is one little bit that does. It basically critiques how small of an IP Violet is to make such a big deal of, stating that Joypolis was the thing that helped Violet grow, not the other way around as it should be with a promotion. This might also be another reason why Music Coaster was scrapped so quickly, and could have even been the reason for the supposed planned retheming. This article made a very good point about Violet being pretty niche, a point that I quickly discovered on my own while researching this. I get coasters not having a lot of sources. Most people aren't documenting every little thing about every coaster they ride. This isn't normal. But with Violet, something that was intended to be kind of a big thing, there's very little to actually go off of. There's a few fan wiki and amino pages, the 2 videos I showed earlier, and a couple other images, along with the manhwa series. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. I mean, searching for a Chinese virtual singer while only speaking English and French isn't necessarily ideal, to say the least. Regardless, I found enough that I was able to put together what I think is a cohesive enough story, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. This was the coaster that kinda gave me the idea to do this entire series when I first came across it all the way back in May of 2022. Yeah, I've been working on this series for quite a while. Next month, we're going to be taking things out of China again, and for the first time in this series, taking it to the good old US of A. Stay tuned, and until then, my name is Atomic Coasters, take care and ride on.